Where their oldest child, Skylin, who turned 5 yesterday, was dropped off at cheer practice, and I think they had a closed practice. So Andre and Jordan and baby Paul had headed to Walmart to do some school supply shopping. He was bruised up, 2 fingers broken. They did an MRI this morning, and everything turned out fine. He was just released from UMC Children's an hour and a half or so ago.
Roughly.
To his grandparents. So I guess as children are resilient, shouldn't be faced with this situation, but he's doing great considering the circumstances.
Dave and Kathy Johnson had taken their 9-year-old granddaughter to the El Paso Walmart, also to purchase school supplies. The 9-year-old was bouncing from aisle to aisle, excited about the upcoming school year and picking out the newest pens and pencils. They were at the checkout line when Dave would first hear the gunfire. Dave would die protecting his granddaughter and her grandmother from the sea of bullets that sprayed them that August day. Listen as Dave's daughter describes how her father saved the lives of her mother and daughter.
They were in the checkout line. They were about to buy everything, and she just said she saw him go down after he pushed them. She didn't know what he was trying to tell them, that he was trying to tell them something, but that he was just pushing them. And
is that like something your dad would do?
yes, 1,000,000 times yes. My mom and my daughter wouldn't be here if it wasn't for him and what he did. And I couldn't even imagine my daughter. I almost lost her.
When a family member received a phone call from a dog groomer saying that Arturo Benavides hadn't picked up his dog from the groomer, the family member started to panic. This was not like Arturo. He was always punctual. The family member was able to track the GPS in his vehicle to the Walmart parking lot, where they would later be told by police that Arturo died in the gunfire.
Walk into the Walmart, me and my mother, as usual, normal day. And that's when we heard 3 gunshots. So I told my mom to wait here and see what was going on in front. That's when I saw the shooter with a black shirt, khaki pants, and with a gun. He was going towards a child, maybe, if I could remember, maybe like 7, 8 years old. That's when I started to shout out to everybody to follow me and to go to this exit door, which is in back of Walmart. And that's where I was pushing everybody out. Like, we need to get out. We need to get out. People were, going crazy, looking at their phones, not knowing where to go. And I was just being patient and very calm and just getting everyone out as soon as possible.
The 25 wounded from gunfire ranged in age from 2 years old to 82 years old. While we would love nothing more than to go into detail about each of the victims, due to time constraints, we are unable to share all of their stories. You can find a link in the show notes that will direct you to the page where you can read about each victim. Much like the Gilroy Garlic Festival shooter, the El Paso shooter was very much a loner his entire life. The 6-foot-tall and 220-pound man grew up with a twin sister and an older brother. His father was a therapist and worked with people who are overcoming addiction, and was a former addict himself. The shooter's mom was a nurse and taught health class for a short time at Liberty High School, where the shooter would attend school before transferring to Plano Senior High School, where he went on to graduate in 2017. His parents would later divorce in 2011. A classmate said that the shooter was always by himself and that he would sit alone on the bus to and from school. He would tease and make fun of other kids that played in the school band and played on the sports teams at school. The shooter would sometimes sit with a group of high school classmates during the lunch hour and discuss anime and politics. His peers would say that he wasn't necessarily racist or rude, He would just make odd comments and ask different questions. He would make comments about how he couldn't wait to be old enough to buy a gun. He didn't have very many friends, if any. His classmates would say that the shooter was always a bit strange.
He had no known criminal history. A picture from his yearbook quotes him saying, "It's interesting to learn about how the world of law enforcement works."
He was kind of always walking alone. Didn't seem like he had too many friends.
Daniel Huh is a former classmate.
He was one of those people that kind of just sat in the back of the classroom.
Neighbors said that the family very rarely went on family vacations because the shooter would become carsick during long trips. From 2017 until the spring of 2019, the shooter attended Cullen College, a small community college in McKinney, Texas. While the shooter was attending college, he was living with his grandparents. 6 weeks prior to the shooting, the shooter had moved out of his grandparents' home, and they had no idea where he had been staying since then.
We do not know. We know his father worked at a psychiatric hospital, and until 6 weeks ago, he was living with his grandparents. We also know that FBI agents searched his grandparents' home and 2 other locations today, and they also seized security footage from a Walmart he frequented. And the weapon used in that attack was bought legally. LinkedIn page, he says, "I'm not really motivated to do more than what's necessary to get by." Now investigators are trying to unravel what would lead this self-described slacker to drive hundreds of miles, walk into a Walmart with a gun, and allegedly kill 20 people.
We are devastated by the events of El Paso and pray for the victims of this tragedy.
This is a friend reading a statement issued by his grandparents this afternoon.
He lived with us in our house in Allen, Texas, while he attended junior college.
His grandparents asked for privacy.
The shooter didn't have any sort of criminal record. One time, in 2014, his parents called the police, thinking that he had run away. However, he came home just 30 minutes later, unharmed. Just minutes before the shooting began, the shooter had posted a 4-page, 2,300-word manifesto onto an online message board called 8chan. The now deleted white nationalist and anti-immigrant manifesto states how the shooter was worried about the Mexican invasion into Texas and a possible Hispanic invasion. The shooter would continue to write about how his so-called Hispanic invasion was the destruction of America. He would praise the Christchurch shooter who killed 51 people and injured 49 when he opened fire at 2 Christchurch mosques in New Zealand. The shooter had full expectations of dying that August 3rd morning, writing in his manifesto, "I'm probably going to die today."
Letter. The shooter describes himself as a white nationalist, a right-wing extremist consumed by conspiracy theories. In short, he thinks that white people are being replaced by immigrants in this country. The letter states, this attack is in response to the Hispanic invasion of Texas. They are the instigators, he wrote, not me. I'm simply defending my country from cultural and ethnic replacement brought on by an invasion. He blames Democrats and Republicans, David, and corporate America as well. He even writes about the destruction of the environment. Going on, he says, most of y'all are just too stubborn to change your lifestyle. So the next logical step is to decrease the number of people in America who are using resources. If we can get rid of enough people, he wrote, then our way of life can become more sustainable. And finally, a personal moment here. The letter says that he hoped he would not survive the mass shooting. Capture, in this case, is far worse than dying during the shooting, he says, because I'll get the death penalty anyway.
Since the shooter surrendered himself to Texas Ranger motorcycle officer just minutes after his shooting rampage, he began talking to investigators, and he was not holding anything back. He would tell detectives that he was trying to kill all the Mexicans and that the Mexicans were taking over the country. The FBI held a press conference warning the public that other violent extremists could be inspired by the attack and to be on lookout for copycat attacks.
Shooter was trying to convey to his peers that he had thought this through.
Megan Squires tracks far-right online extremism and worries the attack could lead to others.
They're inspiring each other. They're creating this narrative where they're valorizing one another.
The shooter used a WASR-10 rifle, much like the Gilroy Garlic Festival shooter. The gun is a semi-automatic rifle, which is a civilian version of an AK-47. Officials have said that the weapon was purchased legally. However, those are the only details available at this time. The judge has denied him bond, and the shooter will remain in custody at the downtown El Paso County Jail until he stands trial. The state will be seeking the death penalty.
The state charge is capital murder, and so he is eligible for the death penalty. We will seek the death penalty.
The investigation into the shooting is still ongoing. The Walmart store is expected to be closed until early September. The store has transferred some employees to other stores while they await the reopening of their store. There are some employees who are still fighting the demonic scene they had witnessed that day, and the store is allowing those workers as much time as they need until they are ready to return to work, all while still being paid. All of the 19 Walmart stores in El Paso have been offering counseling and therapy to all employees who feel the need to seek therapy, free of cost. On August 19, 2019, the shooter, who is still being held at the El Paso County Jail, was put on suicide watch. The watch was recommended by the medical staff at the jail facility. The man was placed under close watch with the corrections officers checking on the shooter every 30 minutes. He was separated from other inmates and placed in a single cell by himself. He will most likely have to wear an inmate suicide suit, which is basically a one-piece suit made out of paper, making it impossible for the inmate to harm themselves with the clothes they are wearing. Once the investigation is complete, and we have a complete profile of the shooter, we will release another episode about the El Paso shooter. As a reminder, the active shooter team is taking part in the Don't Name Them and No Notoriety campaigns, and therefore we are not naming the shooters that carry out these heinous acts in our episodes. If you would like to learn more about the Don't Name Them and No Notoriety campaigns, please click on the links in the show notes. Thanks for listening to Active Shooter. We will see you next week with another episode.
I'm Woody Overton, host of Real Life, Real Crime, the podcast. Join me each week to hear true and unscripted stories of the cases I actually worked during my career as a major crime investigator in South Louisiana. Go to realliferealcrime.com where you can listen to each week's episodes and find links to our social media. I appreciate y'all. Don't let me catch you down on Murder Bayou.
From the brilliant creative minds that brought you Keep Drinking, It'll Get Better, and the Real Housewives of Hillcrest Nursing Home, comes the podcast that people are raving about. Hi, this is Edward October for OctoberPodVHS.com, here to tell you what people are saying about our true crime podcast. A thread store in Arizona says, too much dribble and slang. These ladies obviously enjoy their own humor and sound high. Hey, at least they called you ladies. Benny from Idaho says, your topics are so appealing, but a 3-person pod is difficult enough to follow without banter. Our true crime podcast only has 2 people? Wait. Where's the other 100 5-star reviews? Can somebody give me the 5-star reviews? Okay, here we go. Much better. Luscious Lee says, stand up, 5 stars. You girls are funny AF. I especially love the me and Mrs. Jones rendition you sneak into the recording. Cherry G107 says, I struggle finding a new podcast, and so far, I've been hooked to you guys' podcast. Keep up the good work. Thumbs up, smiley face. Our true crime podcast, 2 girls, 1 story, and lots of bad renditions of songs you love. Available on your favorite podcatcher. Go binge it today.
Here's a list of the sources we used to write this episode. Holly Silverman and Amir Vera from CNN. Chaz Danner from the New York Intelligencer. Alexia Campbell from Vox.com. Andrew Blankstein and Minnie Von Burke from NBC News. Jenny Jarvie,